Oh.
Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Triple P, TRIPPLE and I am your astrology pimp, your astrology prophet, and your astrology priest. On today's 7 Seals Astrology Prophetics video topic will be how to meditate 24 hours each day. So I know most of you guys are asking, how could this be possible? And I will tell you why. Now, this information I'm going to give you guys, actually, I think you should go ahead and watch all of my videos. However, this video in itself is going to be one of my most important videos because this video in itself is one of the most misunderstood videos. One of the most misunderstood information when it comes down to meditation. And as of for myself, I've tried so many different methods of meditation throughout my spiritual journey, and I've always struggled and I've always wondered why it was impossible, or it was near impossible, I should say, to achieve some of these things that individuals spoke about. When I heard great spiritual teachers and other individuals talk about feeling this and having this experience and that experience, I always wondered how was this possible, because it pretty much seemed to be impossible to achieve these things. And what I'm about to tell you today is going to be something that is going to change your meditation game totally. Because without having this understanding about what meditation is, first and foremost, only then that you will be able to actually achieve some of these things what individuals have been talking about throughout the ages. And the first thing I would like to say is that meditation, again, meditation is not something that you do. Meditation is a state of being. Meditation is something that you are 24 hours a day. However, because of our lack of understanding what meditation is, we tend to believe that meditation is a practice. We believe that meditation is something that we do. And that is the problem that most of us will encounter. We will try to do all of these practices. We would sit in a certain way. We would be at a certain posture, and then we would not achieve the stillness or whatever it may be that we've heard about other individuals talking about how great meditation is, but we will not be able to achieve that because we were pretty much doing something. But meditation is not something of a doing. Meditation is something that is of a being. It is a state of being, and you are meditating 24 hours a day, whether you are aware of it or not. So with that being said, getting back to what meditation is from a being perspective, meditation is more so a being than a doing. So what we must understand first and foremost is that when we hear individuals on YouTube or whatever it may be, they may be talking about uh, this particular position that we need to be in, legs folded a certain way, and all of these different things that we need, different postures per se, that we need to achieve meditation. However, these things are all techniques. These are not actual, these things are not actual meditation. These things are actually the techniques that individuals may do in order to achieve meditation, but these things are not actually, uh, they are not actually the meditation as itself per se. So again, these things are more so techniques and methods that we use, and we tend to believe that these methods is actually, uh, we tend to get the method or the technique confused with meditation. We tend to believe that by sitting down at a certain posture with our hands in a certain position, our eyes closed, and we might be observing the breath or whatever it may be doing, we are actually following, they are what you consider to be techniques. However, Meditation in itself is the state of just being aware or being conscious is meditation. So what what I have learned was, again, it's very difficult. Many individuals might try to silence the mind. They might want to figure how they could get the mind to be quiet and all of these things that they try to do. However, trying to silence the mind is something like, it's almost like trying to stop a dog from barking. You know, dogs bark, that is what they do. And trying to stop a dog from barking is pretty much next to impossible. Even if you put one of those shock collars on the dog, eventually the dog will bark at some point, and it's pretty much futile to try to stop a dog from barking, and also, or trying to stop a baby from crying. That in itself also is futile because that is what babies do. They cry. The same way dogs cry, sorry, the same way dogs bark and babies cry, and there's nothing you can do about it. That same thing applies to the mind. The job of the mind is to think, continuously think and process information. So trying to stop the mind in itself is not so much of a uh, productive method for meditation. However, when you come to understand the difference between what meditation is and techniques, you will understand that the mind is constantly running, is constantly going from one thing to another, to and fro. However, what the techniques allow us to do by focusing on our breath and other things of that sort. For example, those are pretty much elementary, I would say, beginners. It's very good to start using objects per se, focusing on the breath or a particular sound around you or something of that sort. Those things are all objective meditations. Those things are not subjective meditation. These things are where you use a subject, sorry, you use a object, and that object becomes the focal point of the mind. And after a period of time, after following the breath for some time or following a particular obstacle, whatever that may be, a particular object, the mind tends to silence itself or go quiet after a period of time, because the mind can only do so much. After a period of time, it too will get tired, just like the dog will eventually get tired of barking, and just like the baby will get tired of crying. Especially if you ignore the baby long enough, the baby will realize it is futile, so it will automatically stop. Therefore, meditation is the same way. After watching the breath for a period of time, or whatever it may be, a mantra, transcendental meditation, or mindfulness meditation, whatever it may be, the mind over a period of time will become silent on its own. There's nothing that you could do to silence the mind. That is like there's nothing you could do to quiet the dog from barking or stop the baby from crying. The mind natural state is to think and process things, because that is what it needs to do 24 hours a day. When you're eating, it needs to be aware of the food that you're putting in your mouth, so you don't get poisoned. When you're walking, it needs to be aware of the objects and obstacles so you don't fall in a ditch. When you're talking, the mind needs to be alert to make sure that you're not speaking or saying the wrong things to the wrong people at the wrong time. So the mind job is to constantly observe. So trying to silence the mind in itself is again a futile process, or a futile goal, if I may say. So the object is not to actually silence the mind, but to understand the purpose of the mind and understand what meditation is. So many of you guys may ask again, how can you meditate 24 hours a day? And again, we get confused with the methods and the techniques of meditation, and we tend to think that they are meditation, that we are meditating. Meditation, again, is a state of being, a state of awareness. When you are, from the minute you have awoken and you wake up in the morning and you open your eyes and you saw your surroundings and you became aware that you are in your room, you are actually meditating. Whether you are aware of it or not, you are meditating. When you are walking down the street, you are meditating because you are consciously aware of what is going on. When you are eating, you are meditating about how much food you put in your mouth, the type of amount, and the list goes on. Every single day, every single minute, you are meditating. So with this understanding, It is quite different from a technique. And where most individuals tend to go wrong is what they tend to do is they tend to because they are not aware of what meditation really is. They follow the techniques and they believe that the techniques is meditation. So they would say they would spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, however long maybe, and they would spend 15, 20 minutes uh, doing methods or techniques, if I may say, and then when they are done, they would go about their lives and they would go back to work and they would go back to their kids and their daily duties and things of that sort. However, what they fail to understand is that those techniques were only designed to give you an idea of the state of what true meditation really is. Because again, I'm not saying that the techniques are not useless. They are very useful. In fact, they are almost, I would say, mandatory per se. Again, you don't have to, but if you have the right understanding, you might not need any methods or techniques. However, the methods and the techniques are like pretty much, again, like say, for example, going to the gym and you have, let's say your bench press weight, maximum weight is 500 pounds, 600 pounds. I'm just making these numbers up. And you don't go to the gym and you don't go to the gym and take 500 pounds on a rack and bench press it just like that. You tend to do warm up sets. You kind of go with some lighter sets, maybe the bar, maybe with the 25s and some 35, 45s, whatever. You gradually work your way up once the muscles become somewhat conditioned to taking on that future weight load. Then you go to that 500. You are warming up just like an athlete. Most athletes who, they perform, run, they jog, they fight, whatever they do, they tend to warm up as well. They tend to do stretches, they tend to do lunges, they tend to do all these sorts of things. Bodybuilders, runners, any athlete, fighters, any athletes that you could think of, basketball players, they usually are pretty much warmed up before they go and they perform their athletic tasks. So the techniques that I'm talking about, the sitting down in silence with the eyes closed and the room in silence and so forth and so forth and so on, those are techniques. Those are warm-up techniques. And I wish I knew this a long time ago, because I too, just like many individuals, have just, only thing you hear on YouTube is sit down, watch your breath, this and that, but then go on. But when you're done with your 30 minutes, you go on with your daily life. No one goes on to say that meditation is a continuous thing, and the techniques were only supposed to be meant for warm-ups. So the techniques are designed to give you a taste of what you can achieve once you start to become a meditation, when you come to use meditation as a daily practice 24/7, 24 hours a day. Because when, again, the techniques, whatever meditation method or technique that you may be using, again, they are all giving you an idea of the methods, that whatever method that you use, they're all going to give you an idea of which you can experience full time, or pretty much if you practice meditation 24 hours. Say, so for example, when you start to meditate, doing a method or a technique, observing the breath, or whatever, a mantra or whatever, eventually your mind will go silent and you would experience some sort of peace, some sort of stillness, some sort of bliss, or whatever experience you may experience. And then the mind, again, like I said, can go completely silent in a much deeper state of meditation. However, what I'm saying to you is that that state that you achieve during those hour time or 30 minutes time of meditation, that can be achieved throughout the day. Because again, what happens is, because you don't know what meditation is, we tend to stop after the 30 minutes is up. We tend to stop after the 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour is up, and we go back to our daily life. What I'm saying to you is that when you use your meditation techniques and methods, and you start to feel some type of bliss, and you start to feel some type of tranquility, or whatever the case may be, that is when you actually start the meditation process 24/7, 48/14, and you go on throughout your day trying to maintain that observation, trying to obtain that awareness, trying to obtain that consciousness, watching everything that you do, watching everything that you say, the same way that you are watching your breath, doing the method or the technique of meditation. I am saying that you should apply that same observation to your everyday life after the meditation process is over. And what will happen over a period of time is you would notice that that stillness that you only achieve was able to achieve during the meditation process, that meditation, that stillness will start to trickle down into your everyday life as well. Because the mind, just like doing the methods of observation, and the mind will get tired and it would somewhat take a rest and give you a break. If you apply that every day and every minute as you're walking, talking, doing whatever you're doing in your daily life, trying to be consciously aware of what is going on, you will notice that the mind itself will also start to go silent, and you will start to get some of that peace, and that tranquility is going to start to trickle down in your everyday life. You're going to start to feel the mind become silent and so forth and so on. So what I'm saying is the same way you are watching your breath in your 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 1 hour, 20 minutes meditation practice, I am saying to you, take that same observation, that same awareness, and watch your mind throughout the day. And the same way, again, the same way when you are doing your techniques of meditation, watching the breath, we all know that over when we start to watch the breath, maybe within the next 5, 10, 20 minutes, whatever the case may be, the mind will wander away, and then you will catch yourself thinking about whatever tasks, daily tasks, jobs, work, children, whatever the case may be. You tend to drift away, and then you catch yourself, and then you come back to the breath, and then you go back to the breath, and then you observe the breath, and then the breath, then eventually again the mind will drift away. Like I said again, the mind naturally does this. There's nothing that you could do about this. I mean, you could take, there's yoga, you can get rid of this over long periods of time. However, what I'm saying to you is the opposite of trying to silence the mind. We are going to let the mind naturally silence itself, because you are no longer trying to be a participant. You are no longer just trying to observe a particular 30, 20 minutes of life. You are going to take this observation practice into your everyday life, and you're going to watch every moment of the day. And the same way again, when you practice your techniques such as breathing observation, and the mind wanders and goes away, and then you come back to your breath, the same thing will apply to your daily life as well. When you start to look at your life, whatever you're doing, walking, talking, whatever the case may be, you might be consciously aware of what you're doing. And just like in the meditation practice, your mind is going to drift away again to other things such as your job, your children, your kids, your obligations, things of that sort. The mind is not going to stay, no matter what you do, the mind is not going to stay that way, watching one thing particular time, because that is the job of the mind. The job of the mind is to observe everything. So what I'm saying is, if you give the mind a job to watch everything, or you watch everything without being judgmental, that same relaxation that you're doing when you are doing your techniques, relaxation, you're relaxed, you're watching the mind, you're trying to not be judgmental. Any thoughts come, you know that the thoughts are not you. Their feelings come, you know that they're not you, and things of that sort. When they come and they go, they will dissipate just like the clouds come and go, just like the waves behind me, they rise and they fall. Your feelings and your thoughts too will start to rise and fall, and they will become calmer and calmer and calmer as you continue to observe throughout the day. However, this may sound somewhat easy, but it's not really easy, because the average person does not, the average person is not aware of what they are doing or what they are saying. The average person, 99.9% of us, we tend to operate on autopilot. We operate on autopilot, and our mind pretty much dictates and tells us what is going on, and we follow our mind, and we act on what our feelings, how our feelings are, and we don't really, again, most of us do not observe anything. We just speak when we feel something, or we act when we feel a certain way, emotions. And however, what I'm saying to you is, it sounds very easy, but it's not as easy as it sounds, because we were not programmed to be this observant. However, what I'm saying is that the same observation that you use when you are doing your 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes practice, we are going to apply that to every day. And again, as time goes on, you the same way those of us who know about meditation, about the effects of meditation, that silence is going to trickle down because the mind is going to start to become silent and tired of actually just watching, and the mind is going to get so, okay, this guy or this girl, they're onto me, because most individuals think that they are their mind, most individuals think that they are their feelings, most individuals think that they are their thoughts. So the mind is having a heyday with most of us. The mind is kind of running rapid without any restraints. No one is controlling their mind. Most of us are just allowing the mind to run around like some wild animal. However, when we practice these things and we start to observe the mind, observe the thoughts without judgment in a relaxation state, the mind is going to say, okay, this individual is kind of catching on to who and what I truly am. And the mind itself is going to start to get tired, and the mind is going to start to subside. The thoughts are going to come down, they're going to become less. And what is going to happen over a period of time, especially if you're not used to this, you might start to feel somewhat like maybe, disorientated. Some of the side effects, you might feel disorientated. You might think something is wrong with you. You might think that maybe who knows, you might think you're sick. You might think you're coming down with a headache or a cold, because the mind is not used to being silent, and is not used to being watched. It's not used to being under such scrutiny. So when you continue to do this, you might become less, some of the side effects again, you may start to become less talkative, because the mind is going to silence itself, and you're going to almost have nothing to say per se. You will start to feel a lot more peace, a lot more bliss, stillness. However, one negative side of this side effect is that you may start to be a little more irritated than usual, because what is going to happen is, over a period of time, when you start to do this and you start to actually enjoy this silence and enjoy this peace, you're going to start to even somewhat uh, become comfortable in solitude. You're going to become comfortable in isolation, spending time with yourself and not necessarily wanting to be bothered, because you're going to start to come to love yourself and know yourself and be comfortable with yourself, in yourself, as yourself, because now all of the negative thoughts and all of the negative feelings and emotions are going to subside, and you're going to have more control over these things. So you're going to start to fall in love with silence and being alone and being by yourself. And so, however, now let's say, for example, you have friends or family members or people who naturally irritated you from the start. They might actually irritate you even more, because now you are going to realize how much uncontrollable these people are. They do not have any control of their minds. They usually very just they just like, again, impulse. They act off their impulse, and you may get again a little more irritated easily than usual, because again, this is not an easy task. I'm making it sound simple, but it is not, because what happens is, you are going to start to observe these feelings and these thoughts and these emotions, but the goal is to actually not respond. The goal is to actually see the thoughts, see the feelings, see the emotions, and actually try to stay in a neutral state and allow the feelings and so forth to go away. That is not an easy task, especially if you are a person who was not meditating normally, or this type of concept is not normal to you. Most individuals automatically, this is going to be a challenge for them. So do not think that this is a walk in the park type thing. In fact, you might actually become more irritated and more angry than usual, because now you're going to have to be faced with sitting with your feelings, and faced with reality. And this feelings, some of the feelings that may arise in you, you may not necessarily be so happy with. So again, and because not having this natural observation type of way of life, you naturally might just be easily triggered, and you could, because you're not used to just watching your feelings and allowing them to go by like the clouds go by in the sky. This is not something that we do naturally. This is what we were meant to do. This is the way the mind was meant to be used as a tool to observe. However, we do not live this way naturally. The mind usually is the dictator of our feelings and emotions, and our thoughts. So again, when we look at again, as we use these techniques, eventually you can discard the technique, because over a period of time, this meditative type of way is going to become a way of life. You're going to constantly, as you wake up in the morning, you're going to be aware of that you have to be meditative and watching what you're doing, what you're thinking, and so forth and so on. And for me, I would say that another good method or technique would be is to create some type of trigger that is going to constantly trigger you to remember that you need to meditate throughout your day as you go on with your life. So again, meditation is when you're walking, when you're talking, when you're driving your car. You cannot meditate if your eyes are closed driving a car. So the things that we're calling meditation, they are temporary methods, and the techniques, they are temporal meditative states. However, meditation again was meant to be a process that goes on all day, every day. Again, over time, that technique is no longer going to be necessarily needed. You can use the technique forever if you like. However, you must understand that you're only using the techniques as a primer, as a warm up to allow you to go into the day with that state of mind, as a little teaser, so you could prepare yourself to know what state of mind you are trying to achieve throughout the day, all day and every day. So again, I don't know if many of you guys have seen a movie, Inception. I think it was with Leonardo DiCaprio, and the dream movie about the dreams and all that. And he had this trigger thing, this tool, a little small little gadget that he spun around like a top, and that was the tool that he used to keep him aware if he was dreaming or not. And when I first started to come across this understanding, I too had a trigger per se to constantly remind me of to get back to being aware and meditate 24 hours no matter what I'm doing. Like I said, when you're driving your car, you're meditating. When you're walking, when you're talking, you're cooking, you are naturally meditating. That is the state of the mind, is to be in a natural state of meditation. However, you may not be aware of it. But however, so whether you are aware that you are meditating or not, you are actually meditating. But however, I am trying to get you to learn how to be aware of your meditative state in a conscious state. So again, I too had a trigger that I used in the beginning, when I understood that meditation was not a technique but a state of being. So I too needed to remind myself constantly of uh, that I needed to be reminded to meditate. However, you could use any technique. I'm not going to tell you what I had a particular word. I'm not going to tell you what word I used, but that word that I used, you could use anything, any technique, any word, anything that's going to remind you just to come back to reality and be conscious of what's going on. That is all you need for that trigger. So I had a trigger was one word, and that word that when I thought of that word reminded me of the reality, the dream state, and I should be aware of what's going on. And when I thought of that one word, I automatically became conscious, and I went back to being in an observant meditative state. Again, this is not easy. This is something that you're going to have to practice over and over and over and over. And again, just like in the meditative state, we all know that that stillness becomes more and more. When you first start to meditate, you might only be able to achieve that stillness state for 1 second, then it goes to 2 seconds, then it goes to a minute, and then 5 minutes, and so on and so on. And some individuals can hold that state for a longer period of time as well. However, when you do what I'm trying to say, that stillness is going to trickle down into your daily life, and you're going to feel that stillness and that quietness and that peace of mind for at least 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, a minute, and so forth, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and on and on and on. But you must, again, the meditation techniques that we use, those are only techniques to get us primed up to be aware of what we can expect in our everyday lives as well. And before I knew this, I always wondered why it was so difficult and it was so hard to really achieve this state. But it was like we were only told half of the story. Most of us are not told the whole story. We do not know. Again, most of us we were told half of the story. We were told to treat the technique or the methods as the actual the thing itself. But the techniques and the methods are only pointers. They are pointing you to somewhere, just like the guys, anybody who know Buddha pointing to the moon, the finger pointing to the moon is a pointer. So the methods and the techniques are pointers that is going to point you into direction. So pointing at the moon, for example, pointing at the moon is pointing to the moon, but there's a big sky behind the moon. And the same thing applies with the meditation methods. The methods is only going to point you in the right direction of the ultimate goal is to achieve this in your everyday life. And I assure you, if everyone was meditative in their everyday life, there would be less accidents, there would be less war, there would be less everything, because we would be conscious of what we were doing. However, because we are not conscious most of the time, we tend to just act impulsively, say things impulsively, do things impulsively, and then we get ourselves in trouble. So this meditation state, this meditative state that I'm speaking about is very beneficial because, again, like I said, that's that feeling that you get of that peace and silence and stillness temporarily only when you meditate sometimes for 40 minutes or whatever hour. That feeling, that stillness, that peace of mind is going to trickle down into your everyday life. And I assure you again, I too, just like the millions, believe that meditation was something. I too believe that meditation was the techniques, the methods. I did not know that meditation was a state of being, something that we did all day, every day. And so I please practice this. Please practice. Try at least to understand that the techniques are only the warm-ups, just like going to the gym, warming up with lighter weights before we go and lift the big boys. And just like the athletes about to run a race, they do scratches, jumps, and basketball players. Any athletes know what I'm talking about. You have to warm up before you go ahead and go all out. So again, the techniques are just warm-ups. So with that being said, hopefully, this has been informative, because when I found this out, I was blown away. I didn't understand, when I heard about meditating while driving, I was like, how can I drive and I'm meditating and I need to close my eyes? Because what happened was, again, not having the understanding of what meditation was, I did not understand that meditation is just pretty much observing, being aware of everything. And the mind will take some conditioning, and so what you have is you have open and closed meditation. Open, closed meditation would be considered watching the breath. Watching the breath. You're looking at something. However, that takes you away from the being state, the self state, because you are looking at an object. You're going away from yourself. You're looking at something or you're listening to something. However, when you go into a being state of meditation, you go 110% inward. So the open meditation would be, again, a closed meditation, closed and open meditation. Closed meditation would be looking at some object, feeling, watching the breath, listening to a sound or something. That is a close. That is a focus type of meditation. Focus, that is a concentration type of meditation. So that meditation can be broken, because if you rely on a focus or a concentration type of meditation, your meditation will always be able to be broken. If someone comes in the room, someone knocks on the door, a dog barks, you're always going to be disrupted. That is why most people who meditate know how annoying it is when you're trying to meditate at home and someone knocks on the door, or someone calls you or something. The phone rings, even a phone beeps for a little, a notification bell, a notification ring. That even is annoying when you're trying to meditate, because you're doing a focused meditation. And when you are focusing, you can always be disrupted, because the mind itself has a focus on something. And when something happens, it disrupts the mind. And then the mind loses its focus. But a being meditation, there is no disruption. You cannot be disrupted from a being perspective, because there is always something the mind is watching. So there's never going to be a disruption, because the mind is watching the sounds, the birds. Someone comes and knocks on the door. They're watching. The mind is observing that. The mind is constantly looking at all things. So you cannot be disturbed when you are doing a being meditation. However, you can be disturbed when you are doing a focused meditation. So that is also a key factor. Being a being meditation versus a focal meditation, watching the breath and so forth. Those are focal points, taking the mind away from the being state and looking at the object. But what I'm talking about is being aware of the self, of the mind, being aware of its surroundings. And you cannot be this, the mind, the being, that cannot be disrupted at all. So I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to, that came to the top of my top of my mind, because I'm sure by now most of you guys know all of my videos are unscripted. I pretty much just talk on the top of the dome, whatever comes to the mind, I say. So again, hopefully this gives you guys a much better understanding of what meditation is, true meditation, and the actual process of meditation, and you understand the difference between the techniques, the methods versus being in a meditative state, being just being as you are already in a meditative state. So with that being said, I want to thank again each and every one of you guys for sticking around this long, and I hope that this video was informative. So please like, share, and subscribe. And also, for those of you, please uh, try your best to not to continue to believe in illusions, delusions, and also believing in hallucinations. Triple P, and I'm out.
Oh.